Oh, they haven't started yet, okay.
Right o'clock. Should be 10. Should be starting right now.
Okay. A good crowd today.
Need to get.
You have to run it, it works. You just have to run an extension cord to an outlet, and there's no outlet here.
We can get a battery
That's
LED,
smart.
clip-on
That's smart.
LED.
Yes, remind me of that when we're not doing this.
My,
Make him diagonal. I
am
think
I
it's the
upside
right thing
down,
to
Hope?
do.
What's the?
Well, you're not helping, leaning.
Does this make it better? People at home are getting seasick.
They're not. I don't think she has it on yet.
I know.
I hope.
Right, yes. Just a check. Well, or just ready to start. We're getting it out to the virtual world, everyone. Just be another second.
Sorry, I had to take care of some classwork.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Thursday Parlay. I asked our guest today to write an introduction, and he told me I should not need a written, having him work here as well. But he started his life in a family of history lovers and grew up reenacting in the area, and so history is actually in his blood. Went off to Hanover College to become a history teacher, and was a history teacher for many years before moving into administration. A couple years ago, after our son graduated from high school, he decided to move back into the classroom, and so he is teaching history again. But one of the loves he has found is our military collection here at the museum. He spent about 200 hours cataloging and cleaning up that collection, and he may give you a peek of it after this presentation this morning, but you're going to see some glimpses. So you didn't come to see me. I will introduce him. We do want to thank Bob Evans Restaurant for providing the breakfast treats. Please get coffee, get treats, take some with you when you go as well. And the Imagine 185 micro grant also supports the Thursday Parlay. So again, thank you all for being here, and please welcome Jeff Galley.
We're going out on Facebook Live here today, so I guess I can't play hooky from school and have to take an official day off.
You can't play hooky from school because 20 Wabash High School students just came in.
They just came in the door. Okay, well, they came to see me. Hey, that's great. And I told my wife as everybody was piling in that I was starting to get a little nervous here because Pete showed up, and we all know Pete is the official historian, and so I feel like I'm being graded today. So if I get nervous, that's what it is. My name is Jeff Galley, and I am a dual role person, really. My official job is I'm a teacher at Wabash High School. I've been at Wabash High School now for about 24 years. The last year was the first year I returned to the classroom after being in administration for 14 years. I was the assistant principal, first at Wabash Middle School, and then moved into the high school. And if anybody knows what it's like to be an assistant principal, 14 years was plenty. I had far outlived the life of an assistant principal and getting close to retirement, and wanted to return back into the classroom and do what I started to do what I love best, and that is teach kids about history. There's just no greater thing to me than doing that. As Teresa said in my introduction, my love of history has been since I was a little kid. I honestly think it started probably when I was about, would have been a freshman, sophomore in high school. Had a great history teacher in Fred Griffith at Northfield High School, who unfortunately passed away early in the incident out in LeGros a number of years ago. But he instilled a real love of history in me. And then about that same time, Indiana Jones came out with the first movie, and what kid who is learning about history and watching Indiana Jones and these major adventures, and my first goal was to become an archaeologist. Wanted to do that really bad. My parents looked at me and said, "Archaeologist, you'll never make any money." So I became a teacher, and now I'm just rolling in it. Let me tell you. But I have taught, as I said, for 24 years. And then, if anybody is familiar with nonprofit organizations, if one member of the family is in a nonprofit, every member of the family is in a nonprofit. And Teresa had come to me, said, we've got a number of items in the collection that really are in need of some serious help. So I said, yeah, I'll come in, I'll volunteer. And I did that for, like she said, about 200 plus hours. And apparently I did something right, because then they brought me on as a part-time employee here. And I have been living basically my life's dream ever since. I love this place. And I think the thing that fascinates me the most is no matter what the item is, every item has a story. And as a historian, as a teacher, as a curator, I feel it is my job to tell that story and record that story so that generations beyond me are able to relive that. And in doing that and telling that story, we are keeping the memories of those individuals alive. And I don't think there's a greater honor that anybody could do than to keep those memories alive for future generations. And in going through the militaria that we have in the Armory, first of all, when I came, we didn't have an armory. It was all mixed in, piled in, stuff was put in boxes, stuff was laying out. It was really disorganized. And so I said, look, we're going to get all of this stuff, because this is important stuff. It was important to me. I come from a family. My great-grandfather was in the First World War in the trenches. His son, my grandfather, Galley, was in the trenches in the First World War in France. My father was in the Air Force, 49 to 51. So it really meant something to me, and I know the sacrifices that our armed service people have put forth, and it just didn't seem right to have that stuff scattered around. And so I found an area of the museum that we could congregate things, put them in, get them stored, work on getting them preserved and cataloged, and so created this armory. And as I was gathering these items, I would find certain things. Some of the things we have provenance on, some of the things we know the history of. Other things, they're just there. Where they came from, how they got here, no clue. One of the first items that I researched and looked into was a World War I doughboy helmet. And on the front, it has a pine tree painted on it, and in the pine tree, it's got a 91 for the 91st Infantry. 91st Infantry was formed out of men from Washington, Oregon, and Western Montana. We're in Indiana. How in the world did that thing get here? You know, this is a helmet. When I researched the unit, they went overseas, they were in France, you know, so we have a pretty good idea that this helmet was in France at some time. How did it get here? Did somebody land on the East Coast and were making their way westward to go back home, came to Wabash? We don't know. That part has been lost to history, but we do know the history of that helmet. And it really started me on a quest for some of these items. and some of these things as to what in the world are they doing here, how did they get here, and what is their story. The vast majority of items that we have in our collection are what we call bringbacks. These are items that were taken from servicemen, brought back, taken from an adversary, brought back here, home, given to relatives, the helmet given to their child to play with out in the yard, certain things like that, some meaning more than others. We have some of those items my mother has in her house from my grandfather Galley, who I said was in the trenches. We carry, we have one of the collapsible cups that he carried with him. We have a picture of him. He was wounded in the First World War at Vimy Ridge, and he was getting wrapped up at an aid station, and a photographer came along and took a picture. Nobody really thought about it at the time. He's there, his arm's all bandaged up, he's got a great smile on his face, the medic's there wrapping him up. Nobody thought about it. And then after the war in Canada, their version of the Legion were selling books on the First World War and Canadian soldiers. It's called Canada in Khaki. There's 3 volumes. They were selling these books to raise money for basically orphans and widows and veterans. My grandmother Galley bought one. A salesman came to the door. She bought it just to get the guy off the porch and get him on his way. It was years later they were looking through that book, and there's that picture. It was actually published and put in the book. We are told it is a picture on a wall in the National War Museum in Ottawa. I've never been there. It's a life goal to get there to see if that's true. But these bringbacks, these items that these soldiers either found, got, they brought them back and they brought them home. And it's a tradition that goes back to really the very beginnings of written history. It used to be when the ancient Greeks conquered another city-state, they would bring prisoners back, they would bring relics back and parade them through town. We know the Romans did the same thing. When they would defeat a barbarian tribe, they would take the ruler of that barbarian tribe, throwing in chains and drag him through the streets of Rome as the armies marched victoriously through. We see it in the War of 1812. The French soldiers, one of their greatest pride were the Napoleonic Eagles and their battle flags. And there are stories of, capturing these things, and you could actually raise yourself out of poverty if you are a lonely private and you capture an eagle. Great movie or great story about that. Although fiction, Sharp's Rifles is a great example of that, if you ever get a chance to watch that old show. There are even stories that they were so prized by the French that rather than have their regimental battle flags captured, they would tear them into shreds, burn them, take the ashes, mix it into their wine, and drink it, so that the British soldiers couldn't capture their battle flag or any remnants of their battle flag. So bringbacks were a very important aspect to the servicemen, and that is the majority of what we have in our collection. The collection itself was really started by items brought back during the Civil War from the soldiers, and then when the GAR post here disbanded, basically because eventually all the soldiers passed away, that became the basis of the museum, and really is the basis of our armory. And after this, when I go upstairs and open it up, you'll see the number of Civil War swords and helmets and different things that we have in there. And really, we're out of room. I need to annex another place in the museum. But my goal today is kind of give you an example of some of the different things that we have in our collection, some of my favorites, and some stories that are uplifting and other stories that are just downright sad. And so with that, Lucky Charms. Everybody has a Lucky Charm. Could be something as simple, a rabbit's foot, a four-leaf clover, a medallion. Lucky Charms are, again, one of those things that go back into history and go deep into history. Soldiers would always carry something with them, a Bible, a cross, a medal. The ad that you see here on the screen, this is actually an ad for a jeweler who, it was very common in 1917 as our troops were going off to the war. They sold Lucky Charms to the troops. My favorite is this. I don't know if you can, cursor's not really working. This little guy here, he's called Thumbs Up, which basically for thumbs up, but thumbs up like a little kid saying it. These were little dolls, little wooden dolls, tiny things that were sold, could be put in a pocket, and they were done for good luck. We all know somebody who may have had, we see a lot of people wear a cross for that, carry a Bible. Even something as simple, excuse me, I knew that was going to happen. It's one of the joys of when you go back to school and we take 800 kids and we put them in one confined area and the giant petri dish, and we create new diseases. It's one of the great things that education does. So everybody's got colds and sickness right now. Down at the bottom in the middle there, a piece of coal. Coal used to be given to people for good luck. Now we think of coal as, if you get coal at Christmas time, you've been a bad child. Well, actually, coal was originally started, the gift giving of coal started as good luck. So there were a lot of instances of these items being carried by soldiers into the First World War. One of the things that we discovered going through the collection was a four-leaf clover. Now, we don't know the provenance of this. It was discovered with some other World War I items. We have to make an educated guess that it was because it was discovered with those items that it is from that period. But it could legitimately be from a later period. Even perhaps maybe the Vietnam War. We don't really know. But we do know what it was found with, and we make that educated guess. It's kind of like in archaeology. If you find something at a certain layer, you begin to date that item with the other items that you find at that layer and find surrounding it. But it's a four-leaf clover. It's encased in a form of early plastic. It's got a little eyelet at the top, so it could be worn as a necklace. Probably was worn as a necklace at some time. And again, one of those things, how did it get here? What's that story behind it? We like to think because it made it home, whoever carried it got home. Again, it's got a story to tell. It's a story we're still trying to figure out and learn about. But something as simple as a four-leaf clover that was picked, before who knows when, given to a soldier, perhaps by a mother or a wife or a girlfriend to carry in remembrance. And the four-leaf clover is as old as time itself, really. There are some scholars who believe that there's a story that says as Adam and Eve were being pushed out of the Garden of Eden, Eve picked the four-leaf clover as a reminder of Paradise Lost. We see the four-leaf clover used by St. Patrick who used it as a way to describe the Holy Trinity. So four-leaf clovers have a tremendous history in themselves, but our little four-leaf clover here that we found in the collection, we hope that individual made it home and he had a good life, and hopefully sometime down the road we'll be able to learn more about that story and be able to tell more about that four-leaf clover. Let's move on to right before the Second World War. This is a picture of what is known as the Coppice train station. This is a pre-World War II picture of this train station, and this is located in the northern Philippines. Coppice it was created as part of the National Philippine Rail System. It's just a little train station, no big deal. When it was built, just a stop on the rail line. But once World War II started, the Coppice Rail Station had a pretty nefarious history. When the war started in December of 1941, after the attack on Pearl Harbor, the Japanese the next day on the 8th immediately began attacking the Philippines. Within several weeks, they had landed troops on the Philippines and basically pushed the American and Filipino forces back into the Bataan and Corregidor areas. They held out for 3 months, at which time they had to surrender. And with that surrender were about 15,000 American troops and 60-some thousand Filipino troops, immediately taken captive by the Japanese. The next day after the surrender, these troops were forced to march from basically one end of the Philippines almost to the other. They were taken to what is known as the San Fernando railhead, where they were loaded onto boxcars, World War I style boxcars that you see down here on the right-hand side. This is actually on the left is a picture of the rail station today. But once they were loaded onto the rail cars, they spent 24 hours on the trains going north. And then they were stopped at the Coppice train station. This is the Bataan Death March we hear so much about, when the American troops and Filipino troops forced to march by the Japanese. If you slowed down for any reason, they were immediately shot or bayoneted onto the side of the road. The brutal treatment that the troops endured under the Japanese on the Bataan Death March, it has made itself into history. And so after this agonizing march that they had to go through, and then being loaded onto this rail car and packed in so tight in this rail car that they couldn't bend, they couldn't move. During the trip to Coppice, those that died standing up. And when they arrived at Coppice, they actually were kept in the boxcars for another day without being unloaded. No food, no water, no restroom facilities, guys passing away. And when they opened, the stories go that when they opened the cars at the railhead, the bodies just fell out. So many people had died because of this. Then once they arrived at Coppice, then they had to go on a 9-mile forced march to what was called Camp McDonald. And this was the prisoner of war camp that they would stay in. Now, we had at Wabash High School a teacher for many, many years, and if we have any Wabash graduates here, Bill is one of them. The science teacher that was there actually was a Bataan Death March survivor. and they called him the Bug Man because he was fascinated by bugs. But a story that really many people did not know until after he had passed and it had come out. But they get to the station, they're forced to walk 9 miles, and they end up at Camp McDonald. Now, what does this have to do with our armory, right? I mean, this is going on, it's the other side of the world. What has it got to do with us? Well, going through the collection, I came across an armband. And I thought, obviously, you could tell it's Japanese writing. And I'm like, what is this? This is a canvas armband. It's a sleeve. It was worn up. I wonder what this says. Now, I don't read Japanese. To me, yeah, that's just a lot of marks. But luckily, believe it or not, Wabash High School has one of the top-rated Japanese language programs in Indiana. And so I took photos of this and took it to Mr. Chittenden, who is our Japanese language teacher, and he looked at it and he was like, Japanese, this is old Japanese. I didn't know there was new Japanese, but he said, this is old Japanese. He said, his wife is Japanese. Let me take these to her. Let me see what she can do. And she was actually, through the help, as I'm told, through the help of her mother, was able to interpret this. And the armband showed that what the sayings on this are is station manager or chief, the head of the station, a radio denizen, and this is a Filipino name. All right, it's not a Japanese name, it's a Filipino name. So this would have been a Filipino that was working with the Japanese at this station. Management Bureau, Tarlac Brand Office Land Transport, which is the region that San Capos is in, or the Capos train station is in. Station Manager, Capos Station, Tarlac. Got a cough again. Tyson, I can't pronounce the last name, but again, Filipino name, District Land Transportation Bureau branch office. This is the armband that identified the head of the Capos train station when the troops on the Bataan Death March came through there. Again, how in the world does this get here? The stories that this armband is involved with is truly, truly amazing. And the fact that we are honored to be able to have such a piece of history here in Wabash is truly amazing. And again, something that might have been lost to time if we had not been able to truly have the opportunity to find it, research it, look at it, learn about it. And again, these stories that I'm telling you, just because we know this part of it doesn't mean the story ends here. I still would love to have the time to be able to identify this person, find a picture of this person, look at his genealogy. But I don't think the museum's going to pay for the trip to the Philippines for me, so we might have to hold off on that a while. But again, just a simple, innocuous armband and learning its story and discovering what it was actually part of. Today, the rail station is a monument to the Bataan Death March. As I had said, on the left is what it looks like today. They have one of the rail cars there today. Surprisingly, spookily, very similar to what we were familiar with seeing in Nazi Germany and the types of cars that they used. And then there's a plaque and a monument there as well. So again, kind of a bucket list item to one day maybe able to get to travel there and see this in person. So while we're talking about the Second World War, I want to talk about the Shinobari. This was discovered in a box underneath a bunch of other items. And a Shinobari is a 1,000 stitch belt. This belt, it's a wide white piece of canvas, ties in the back to be worn around the waist. And there are 1,000 stitches in this. Now, the Shinobari dates back into the early Edo period of Japan, and it is for good luck. Again, we see that good luck symbol, that item given to a soldier to be worn, to be carried for good luck. They came in all forms. This one, like I said, is designed to be worn. Some were designed to just be folded and put into a pocket. Some were made kind of like a piece of cloth to be put on a backpack or worn on a backpack. But the idea was, this is going to give the soldier good luck. This is going to protect them. This is going to prevent them from harm and keep the bullets away. And what it was is, just like we had, we kind of forget that our adversaries during the Second World War were very similar to us. And the things that, some of the things that they did are very similar to some of the things that we did here on the home front. Just as during the Second World War, we had metal drives and you know, save your paper, donate your paper, save your fat and waste. I remember my grandmother telling stories during the First World War about knitting socks and making socks to send to the troops overseas. The Japanese did the same thing, and this was a great example of that. Shinobari were created on the Japanese homeland by organizations. It could be a group of ladies, it could be a special patriotic organization, or it could be a wife or a girlfriend, and they would make these. This particular one, I could put my glasses on to be able to see this. This particular one was made in, I'm going to butcher this name, so I'm just going to basically tell you what it means in English. The Patriotic Women's Association for National Defense. This was an organization that was operating out of Aikido in the Osaka Prefecture. It was formed in 1932 when Japan first went to war on the Asian mainland. Disbanded in 1945, of course, at the end of the war. But this was made by the local women in this organization. And what they would do is they would have like knitting parties, basically, where they would all come together, and each lady would make a stitch or would make so many stitches. They would take these to like train stations or public places and have the ladies and the girls that were walking by, you know, put a stitch in here, put a stitch in here, put a stitch in here, and they would create these through that manner, and then they were either given out to the soldiers as they boarded trains to be shipped out, or they were put in boxes from home, you know, Goodwill packages, things like that, and sent to the Japanese troops who were fighting wherever they may be. This, we don't know where it came from. Well, take it back. We know where it came from. We don't know how it got here. Again, one of those items. And what you have to remember is that when the museum was created, and again, that was over 100 years ago when the Wabash County Museum was created, record keeping was not always the greatest. And different directors and different people, different ways. And so it wasn't always the greatest. Plus, over 100 years, you know, when something would come in and it was tagged, you know, that tag may have been put on it or maybe through the use of tape or a pin or something like that. But, we're talking 80 plus years ago, tags disappear, pins fall out, provenance is lost. And so we have to do our due diligence and research and try to find out as much as we can. Who this came from, we will probably never know. How it got here, we will probably never know. But we do know what it is, and we do know what the purpose of it was. And we do know that at some point in time, this fell into the hands of an Allied serviceman who brought it home or sent it home, and somehow it ended up here in Wabash. Stories it could tell. Okay, sticking with our Second World War theme here, I guess. I never really thought about that when I was putting this together. These are pictures. This is the middle picture of a Japanese soldier wearing a shinobari. And then you can see on the left and on the right how they were made. And these groups of women and girls getting together to make these. Okay. Probably what I consider to be one of the saddest items, and we have a lot of sad items, but one of the saddest items in our collection. In 1941, Ronson Lighters came out with a special lighter. Of course, Zippo was all of fame, and there were some other organizations. Ronson was one of them. But they came out with a special lighter. It had a windshield on it. So it's a cigarette lighter, and it had a windshield that you could put up that would protect the flame so it wouldn't go out in the wind, right? It was a big deal. Everybody bought them. It was a big thing. It was common to have a Ronson lighter, okay? So on September 29th, 1922, an individual was born here in Wabash by the name of Harold Rudisell. Wabash High School graduate, 1940. Harold in high school, this is his high school yearbook picture. He was known as Don Juan. And as you look at him, you can tell, man, this is a good-looking guy. This is a great photo. 18 years old, right there in that photo. Was a member of the High Y. I don't know if you guys know what the High Y is. High Y was an organization of boys only. Sorry, ladies. Boys only. And it was supported by, created by the YMCA. And it was just an organization to promote school spirit and patriotism and so on. Member of the Science Club, Student Council, Sycamore staff, which incidentally for you Wabash High School grads, I currently am the Sycamore staff, Sycamore yearbook director, and we are working on our 129th edition of the Wabash High School yearbook, one of the oldest running yearbooks in the state. So it's kind of cool. And he was in the senior play. Like all young men of his age, following the attack on Pearl Harbor, a year later, he graduated from high school, went to Fort Wayne Business College, and was in Fort Wayne Business College up until when he enlisted in December of 1942 and went into the service. We don't really know a lot about his time training service, but we do know that shortly, a couple years later, after the landing in D.D., or after the D-Day landings, Harold Rudisell is in France. He is with his platoon. He's 22 years old, and he is in eastern France fighting the Germans. On December 19th, 1944, he's a sergeant. His platoon was ordered to take a German roadblock. As the squad that he has is moving forward, their point man is shot by a German sniper. His training kicks in. He runs to the point man to save him, and he is shot. The bullet entered his left front breast pocket area and killed him instantly. When his body was retrieved, it was discovered that the bullet had entered the left front breast pocket and gone through his Ronson lighter. We have his Purple Heart, we have the Ronson lighter in our collection. Now, this particular item, we know how we got. Shortly after his death, his parents were notified. It was Mr. and Mrs. Alva Rudisell. And I believe, Pete, you can probably correct me on this if I'm wrong, they had a diner basically where Goodfellas is now.
Yeah, it wasn't a diner.
It was like a dry.
Yeah, it was a small building, and it was a drive-in, and some people have said it's the first drive-in in Indiana.
Correct, yes.
I don't think that's true, but it's true.
It makes for a great story.
And that, the Rudells also had a neighborhood grocery store, stood on Emma Street. I think I had to walk there. The
Right.
building was still there.
Okay. But basically where the Goodfellas Pizza is today, they were notified of his death, and then several weeks later, they received in the mail this box. And in the box was his Purple Heart and the Ronson lighter. I'm told the family had a very difficult time getting over his death. He is, I believe he's buried here. I'd have to look that up to make sure. But this is what I initially found in the archive was this box. And you know, I read that return address, Army Effects Bureau, and I knew, had an idea it wasn't going to be a happy ending when I opened that box. But this small, simple Ronson lighter, the story that it carries, and the tragedy that it carries, and the reason I've identified this as a sad Christmas is that it was the end of December, beginning of January that the family got notification of his death. Again, we are very proud and honored to be the stewards of this artifact. Okay, something a little more enlightening. Here's your infantry. Was up working in the archives, Alex's neck of the woods one day, and I noticed in behind, if you ever seen our archives, it's really cool. I geek out over things like this. You have these giant shelves from floor to ceiling, and then like cool archive shelves, they got the big crank on them that you turn, and the whole length of the room shelf moves together. And then all around one wall are file cabinets, just boom, 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 boom. And in between those file cabinets, I was cleaning the top of one off, and I saw something down in behind against between the filing cabinet and the wall, that little space there. What in the world is this? So I pull it out, and it is about 11 by 17 cardboard, orange. The orange color doesn't show up very well in the picture, but it's a poster, an advertisement for Here's Your Infantry. Back your infantry with war bonds. Wabash High School football field, Wednesday, June 6, 1945, 8:45 p.m. Everybody's free. Children under 14 need to be accompanied by an adult. This got me thinking, what in the world is this? You know, I've been at Wabash High School for 24 years. I never heard anything about this. So I got looking. And what we have here is, so next slide. part of the 7th War Loan Bond Drive. By 1945, things were going our way. The Germans, by June, when this event went on, the Germans had surrendered. We were now looking at the invasion of Okinawa, and the possibility, or the belief was, eventually the invasion of Japan itself. And so the 7th War Drive was a goal, and Indiana's goal was to raise $14 billion for the war effort through war bonds. Now, war bonds, they've been sold since World War I. Everybody, we hear stories about war bonds. Buy bonds was a term that was as common as Coca-Cola during the Second World War. Everything had buy bonds. You know, we had movie stars, Bing Crosby, Bob Hope. You know, they're always buy bonds. Even Bugs Bunny and Daffy Duck, Porky Pig, were telling you at the end of cartoons, buy bonds. And the purpose of them was you buy the bond, government gets the money, and then after a certain amount of time, you can cash that bond in and get your money and interest back. So Indiana was supposed to raise $14 billion. So what they did was create basically a show of shows, where a group of men, servicemen, would travel around the state and put on an exhibition of what combat was like, and they would attack a pillbox, and they would show you how it was done, and you would see the tools of war in action. And this was put on Alumni Field at Wabash High School. It is said to be the largest attendance at Wabash High School ever, far exceeding what they had had for any homecoming event up to that time. It said over 6,000 people. It was standing room only. Now keep in mind, at this time, the high school only had the one set of concrete bleachers there that had only been built during the 1930s and the Depression. But here, you know, see real combat action, infantrymen wipe out Jap pillbox in astounding assault. Now, if that's not patriotic and propaganda right there. Flamethrowers in action, mortars, machine guns, grands, carbines, blasting the enemy with a curtain of smoking steel. You know, I love the guy that wrote this. This is great stuff. Infantry weapons on display. This was a big deal. And you got into this, and the whole idea of this was to get people to buy bonds. You know, they people there in the crowd selling bonds and getting people to buy them and so on. So these pictures are actually taken out of the Wabash Plain Dealer that were published to support the event. The crazy thing about this is this was a big deal in the community. It was put on June 6th. I'm gonna find my glasses here, getting old. Where's my notes here? It was actually organized by Robert Mitten, who was chairman of the Special Events Subcommittee for the County War Finance Organization. That's a big fancy name for a post. But he was the one that organized this. And the group of soldiers that came in, these were all veteran soldiers. They had all been overseas. They had all seen combat action. They had all earned their combat infantry badge. Most of them had at least one or two Purple Hearts. There were a number of Bronze Star winners. There was a Silver Star winner, and there was also a Medal of Honor winner that were in this group. But they came into town the day before the event. They stayed with people in the town. Dinner was provided for them, but the host families that they were staying with had to make them breakfast. They unloaded, they came in trucks, they unloaded here on West Market Street, and they set up their equipment between Wabash and Miami Streets. And it is said that over 2,000 people came downtown to see this. Businesses closed. It was a big deal. They had a band with them. It was the military band. It was out of a unit out of Oklahoma. They played, and they had a big shindig down here in town. And then the next day, they had the event at the high school. The Wabash High School band played. The street department, I love this, the street department built the pillbox. They brought in brush and leaves and stuff to build that could be burned. They built a pillbox out of logs and treated it so that it could be burned. I can't imagine a football coach allowing things being burned on their football field right now in today's world, but back then you did it for the war effort. And it was a big deal. Like I said, over 6,000 people attended. The next day after the event, they loaded up on their trucks and they went to the next town, which was Peru, and they did the same thing over again. They went to 20 different cities in Indiana, and like I said, by the end of the seventh war bond had raised $14 billion. Actually, the goal was 14. They actually raised $24 billion in the seventh war drive. So Indiana did its part to help back the war effort. All of this from just this poster discovered behind some file cabinets. One of my favorites, absolute one of my favorites. Captain Dean Dernball, United States Army Air Force. Now, if you can't tell this guy was a pilot, just look at that picture of him. Now, that just screams World War II pilot right there. Dean Dernball was born and lived in Rowan, Indiana. Graduated Rowan High School. His father owned a service station, but it was more on the repair side than selling gas. The building is still there today in Rowan. If you know where the community center is in Rowan, behind it is this big cinder block building. That was his family service station right there. They sold, delivered gas, fixed cars, things service stations do. Graduated from Rowan, and again, when the war begins, he signs up and goes into pilot training. Once it joins the Army Air Corps, goes into pilot training and becomes a pilot. We don't know a lot about his training period, although we can guess that it was pretty normal, what you would see for a person of this time period. Starting out with so many hours, moving on to the next stage, and a more powerful aircraft. Probably started out in biplanes, a Stearman biplane, moved to the PT-17 Fairchild, eventually going into the T-6 Texan, and then ended up in the P-47 Thunderbolt. In May of 1944, Captain Dernball is flying a P-47D. His airplane was named Miss Joan. I'm dying to learn why he called it Miss Joan. Because he didn't have a wife at the time, didn't have a girlfriend that we're aware of at the time. Nobody that I can find in the family history was named Joan. So if anybody out there knows why it was Miss Joan. But it was, again, stereotypical fighter pilot, got the name on the plane. He's got a pin up on the left side of his front cowling there. Good looking aircraft. May 1944, he is working operations in eastern France. They are flying. He came up through the Mediterranean, flew operations in the Mediterranean. They eventually get moved. The airbase gets moved to France. And by May of 44, they are flying into Germany, looking for targets of opportunity. That's what it says on his orders for the day, target of opportunities. That day, there were 527 sorties that flew out of Allied territory to attack different targets in Germany. Of those 527 sorties, he is one of only 2 that did not make it home. He is flying a mission in the Heidelberg area of Germany. He flies in, comes in on a strafing attack, is hit by flak, and anti-aircraft fire, is unable to regain altitude, and crashes in this region. His wingman saw him go down, did not see signs of life, and so his family gets the telegram, the notification that he is missing in action. Now, this is about 2 weeks before the end of the war in 1945 that he is shot down. So pretty fortunate in that. He's captured by German Luftwaffe troops, interrogated, sent to a prisoner of war camp, and then, like I said, 2 weeks later, the war's over, and he's released. And that's the first notification that they get that he is alive. Don't know anything else. All they know is he came out of a camp. Eventually, his family reads in the newspaper. Gotta love the news. Even then, it moved faster than the snail mail. Gets word in the newspaper that he's alive. He's being flown out of Europe, and he will arrive at Camp Atterbury on such and such a date. Comes home. Eventually, gets married. 1949. He and his wife moved to Burbank, California, where he gets a job with Lockheed, and he works with Lockheed Aircraft for the rest of his life and retires from Lockheed. Passing away, I believe it was in 1985. Had a great life. Actually, when he worked at Lockheed, one of his main jobs was working in the wind tunnel. And so he was instrumental in doing wind tunnel research on the space shuttle and what can carry it, and how an aircraft could carry it, and doing that research through the wind tunnel. So really had a good life. Really had a good life. Just a normal story, right? Well, the normal story disappeared. Oh, this is a crash site right here. This is right after the war. He visited the crash site, and his plane was still there, and had these pictures taken. Where it gets interesting and where this story takes a turn is not this summer, but last summer, I receive a phone call from Germany. And I'm like, Germany? Who's calling me from Germany? And my first thought was, years ago, my wife and I hosted an exchange student from Germany, and we still stay in touch with her. And I thought, well, maybe it's Kathy giving me a call. But it wasn't. It was an individual. He is part of an organization that is researching and finding the history of this area that Captain Dernball crashed in. And he was notifying me that they had found his plane. They had found where his crash site was. After the war, a lot of times what they did was they just dug a hole, dumped all the equipment, crash site into it, covered it over. 80 years later, things get forgotten. They had found it. They had gotten special permission from the government, had done a little research, and had found where he crashed. And they wanted to let us know, we found his airplane. Do you have any information on him? Because they are creating a memorial to him. And I'm like, oh, this is just too good to be true. This is like Hollywood stuff. And so I talked to him for quite a while and told him I'll see what I can do, see what I can find out. And in doing the research over the next several weeks, I get another phone call. And this phone call is from Captain Dernball's sister. And she says, hey, I got notified by this gentleman in Germany. They found Dad's plane, or they found my brother's plane. My mom is still alive. She would like you guys to have some of his things. I'm like, all right, this is good stuff. Long story short, they had been talking back and forth. I got talking to them, talked to the family, and said, yes, we would love to have this. It's our goal at some point to get some of his plane, some parts from his plane, because I talked to them in Germany about that so we could create our own display. And so weeks go by, and all of a sudden I get this giant box from FedEx. I'm like, what is this? And, oh, I'm sorry, I got it. You can see here, this is where he crashed. This is the area that he crashed in, just south of Frankfurt there where the pin's at. But I get this giant box, and it's his Foot Locker. And I open it up, and look at that. It's his painted Foot Locker. It's so cool. It's got his wings on it, Lieutenant A.D. Dernball, and I'm thinking, man, this is so cool. Boy, this Foot Locker's heavy. What in the world? And I opened it up, and it is packed. It's got family history in it. It's got stuff from his father who served in the First World War. It's got his uniform, parts of his uniform, books, manuals, you name it, from his entire life. And I'm looking through all this stuff, and I'm like a kid in a candy store, digging through this. I love it. It's great. And I find this blue Air Force portfolio folder. It's got the little clasp on it, little brass clasp, and it's got his name in gold, Lieutenant A.D. Dernball, U.S. Air Force. And I open it up, and there are these pages torn out of a magazine, and I'm looking at them, and I'm like, this is odd. One of them's a picture of a dog. One of them's just half an article on something that was going on in New York. And you could tell they're torn out of a magazine, but they're just really, there's no rhyme or reason to what was on these pages. And there's about 4 of them, 5 of them. And I flip them over and look on the backside. They were pinups. Captain Dernball had himself some pinups in his Foot Locker. And I'm like, oh, this is great. This is amazing. Don't know who they are. He had pretty good taste, if you ask me. But it was just a neat find in a serviceman's Foot Locker. And it just proves you never know. Quick side story. I was going through a Vietnam jacket. And I told my wife, I said, the thing that you always have to do when you look in a uniform or you get something, you gotta check the pockets. You always check the pockets because, sometimes a train ticket gets put in there, or a piece of paper or a note or something gets put in there. And some rummage around, and on the inside of the jacket, there was a pocket that had been made on the inside, so you could open it up and put it down low. And inside the pocket, women's underwear. I don't know, but you always check the pockets. We found train tickets in things. We found notes. You just never know. You just never know. Excuse me. Um, Couple things. I'm at my hour's time. I get long-winded when I talk about this stuff. One of the other items that was found, air raid instructions. Again, this was found at the bottom of a box. It's just a piece of paper. Air raid instructions put out by the Wabash County State Defense Council, which later on, following the war, this organization is disbanded, but Harry Truman reinstitutes the overall group that this was part of, and that becomes civil defense. But what this was is this was handed out to the people of Wabash what to do in case we were bombed by the enemy. So if you hear the air raid siren, which incidentally, the reason it is called an air raid, siren is it was originally created by a Frenchman in the early 1700s as being able to send sound underwater. And it got its name siren from Greek mythology, the sirens who produce the sound that lured the sailors and everything to their deaths on the rocks. But that's why we call it a siren today. Really came into its own air raid sirens, really came into their own during the First World War, after the first bombing that Germany did on London. The British government said, we got to find a way to be able to notify our people, and they created the air raid siren, and we see it up through the Second World War. Air raid wardens whose job it was is to teach the public what to do, very possibly hand sheets like this out. But this is what you do. This is what we were supposed to do in Wabash if we heard the air raid sirens. Hear that long drawn out siren. Air raid is possible. Raiders are overhead. Raiders may return, and then raiders have passed, giving us our instructions what to do. A lot of people don't realize it, but we still have air raid sirens today. Although today we recognize them as tornado sirens. But their purpose is still the same, to warn the public of impending danger. Right now, Wabash, I believe we have about 14 of these around the community and the county throughout. Last item I want to talk to you about, we've talked a lot about military stuff. This particular item is not military, is just fun. Sometimes you find things that are just fun. And that is the Limerick Up-to-Date book. Who doesn't love a good book with limericks? We all know limericks are those short, easy to memorize, rhyming things that at the end have a little twist to them, we'll say. Some are fun, some are risque. Depends on what you're looking at. Limericks actually came about mid-1700s. They're believed to have begun in Ireland, or the coast of England on the Irish side, the west coast there. But limericks are just fun. And this book was produced in 1903. Now, it's just a limerick book. Nothing fancy, nothing crazy about it. It's just a book of limericks. But what makes this story interesting is who wrote it and who illustrated it. Now, the book is written by Ethel Watts Mumford. She was born to a well-to-do family. She got the best education a lady could get in the late 19th century. She was very interested in art. She went to the Juilliard Art School in Paris when she was 14. traveled extensively throughout Europe, doing what 14, 15, 16, 17, 18-year-olds do, traveling, looking, learning, having fun, living the life, because she had the money to do it. I mean, this is a very, very well-to-do person. She goes on, she publishes her first book, Dupes, and then goes on after that. A number of writings, a number of works, short stories. A number of her stories were made into plays and produced as plays. Just a really well-known female author, even today in writing circles. Example of one of the limericks that's in it. There was a fair dame whose maneuver was to get her portrait in the Louvre. But they sent it away the very first day, and now it's in a dive in Vancouver. The book is full of them. I'm telling you, the book is full of them. Ethel, great writer. The illustrator, and she helped illustrate this, but the illustrator is even more famous. The illustrator is Addison Meisner. Addison Meisner was the architect of the day. It is his buildings that make up Palm Springs and Boca Raton, Florida. If you've ever been to those areas, there's a very unique architecture that you see. And you can see some examples here, the big building in the middle. And he was not known just to be an architect for the outside or the building. He did it all. He designed the inside. He designed the furniture. And this so-called Florida design of architecture that he created, that you see in Palm Beach, Boca Raton, that area, becomes very, very famous. And if you go there today, you see things like Meisner Pond, or you see Meisner Road, Addison Road. The building at the bottom, that is Addison Meisner Elementary School in Boca Raton. Extremely, extremely famous illustrator of the day, who hung out with some of the most famous people of the day. Truly, truly an interest. Big man, 6'2", 250 pounds, trendsetter. Stephen Sondheim wrote a musical about him. There's even there was a bar and a lounge named after him in Walt Disney World's Grand Florida Resort and Spa. You know you've made it when Disney's naming a bar after you. Just a fascinating man who lent his pencil to illustrating the famous Limerick book. Limericks, they go on by the mid to late 18th or 19th century. You know, everybody's writing limericks. Robert Louis Stevenson, Rudyard Kipling, you name it. They all tried their hand at limerick books. But the limerick book that Watts wrote is by far one of the very, very first to hit it off. And for that reason, it's one of my favorites. Even I tried my own writing of a limerick. There once was a little green book which sat quietly hidden in a nook, but when it was found like a baleful hound, its reader just had to look. You know, you think of being a kid and finding that book, you know, kind of in your uncle's den, and you just got to look at it because you know there's going to be something that you probably shouldn't read in there. Lots of fun. Thank you for taking time out of your morning to come listen to me ramble on about my passion. I hope you've enjoyed. I'm going to go upstairs, open the Armory. If you want to see it, we got stairs here. We got the elevator down here around the corner. So you can take a look and see kind of what we've done and what we've got. And if anybody has any questions, I'll answer them now, or I can answer them up there. But again, thank you for taking time to come see me today. Thank you.